My name is Liz Frenkel, F-R-E-N-K-E-L, and I've moved to Corvallis in 1965, and somewhere between 1965 and 1970 I became a member of the League. I worked on numerous committees, both state and local. I think the most important thing to me about the League right now is the fact that it is multi-purpose. It has multi-issues. It doesn't just have a single issue. And I think that is really a selling point for the League. In other words, you here at the Capitol, well, of course, they're single issue. We are not. We have governance, and we have natural resources, and we have social policy. Three seemingly quite disparate areas, but we work on all of them, and it's amazing how much time we find, how many times we find there's an interchange from governance to natural resources or social policy. So it's both the advertising fact that it's multi-issue, but it also, that gives us more strength, I think. I looked at a couple of issues that I thought were sort of key to what I was thinking. And one of them, and that's a very interesting one, it was something that the League did. They began, the Coos Bay League realized that there was a developer that wanted to put in a motocross, whatever you call it, field, a lot of acreage. And they were saying that was okay in farmland because parks were allowed in farmland. Well, they took that to I don't know that they went through LUBA. I think they might have gone to LUBA. At that point, it had become a real crunchy issue because the developer was saying, wait a minute, the League doesn't have standing. I mean, you aren't financially harmed by this. Ooh, we weren't financially harmed by this, but we felt that we had standing as a public organization that was concerned about farmland, etc. That issue was then became a cross. We were dealing with natural resource issues, protection of farmland, but the bigger issue at that time came, does the League or any other nonprofit organization have standing? It went to the Court of Appeals. It was a 5-4 decision, and Mary Dietz will go down with a halo, in my view, for leading the charge, saying, yes, indeed, these decisions were land use decisions, and they went through LUBA. Court of Appeals was saying, we don't have to deal with this. I mean, that's a land use issue. This debate went on for some time. As a matter of fact, we lost. And then on a pure fluke, on another issue, Thousand Friends took a case to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court looked at this old ruling and said, what? And they ruled unanimously, the League of Women Voters has standing. I mean, it was a wow. And of course, this made a lot of difference to lots of non-profit organizations. That was, again, multi-issue. Grace Vinnie was my mentor par excellence. Grace had moved from president of the local league. She moved to the Environmental Quality Commission. just big job. And then she moved from there to the Energy Facility Siting Council, which up until she retired, she was part of. Incredible woman. What I remember most about her, you know, in those days we didn't have all these gadgets. We had easels and paper. She would write out what she was going to say, flip over, go through the presentation. And she always said to me and to the people there, now of course you can read this for yourself. And then she would read it to them. And she said, it's the most useful tool I've ever found. Reinforces beautifully. Grace was also chair of one of the early water studies. And there were a couple of other people on the water studies. There were water and energy were the two things that kind of intervened or interrelated. I remember sitting in Grace's living room. Grace plus Marguerite Watkins from Coos Bay, plus Marion Frank from Eugene, 3 powerhouses in this state, and they all powerfully smoked. The room was just a cloud of smoke. I didn't smoke. By then I had given it up. None of them, they all went to their grave smoking like chimneys. These are kind of key memories on a state level. But what I wanted to go to also were key people in Corvallis. And some of them worked at the state as well. Marge Chilcote. She has told me several times, she's dead now. Matter of fact, all these people are dying. She told me about early on, this was before I joined the League in '67 or whatever it was, the local league had formed a group and they marched on downtown to the county courthouse backwards. And this was demonstrating how backward the Constitution was and how it needed reform. I can't find anybody else that's alive that can confirm that story, but I will say Marge Chilcote didn't usually make things up. But it was one of those lovely stories that you remember. Other things that I remember about the Corvallis, I came here from Berkeley, fresh out of, literally, the free speech movement. It was jivey. I came to Corvallis, and at that time, Corvallis didn't have any French bread. They didn't have any, the spices were rosemary and thyme and maybe sage. There wasn't a used bookstore. You couldn't buy decent records. Marge called me one day, I didn't know her from Adam, and she said, would you like to come to a league meeting with me? Marge arrived to pick me up and looked down and said, oh dear, I forgot to change my shoes. She had her bedroom slippers on. Didn't faze her in the slightest. I was enchanted. I joined the league not knowing anything about any of the issues. I didn't even think about that. But needless to say, inside, advocacy was going to pop out. And yes, it did. And it's important, and I think it will go on being important. The League has gotten better in that it's more transparent how it works. it still frustrates people that you have to go through all these committees and stuff, but it's neat to track things. And it makes for a more solidly based organization. I think it's an excellent organization. Best thing they ever did was decide that 50% of the population could be members. And that was something I've been very concerned about. Even I have lobbied to have the name changed. But there are a lot of old-timers that they wouldn't have had this option. I think I probably would have found my birth somewhere. On the other hand, a lot of people need a place for decent information. They need a place that will perhaps trigger them to become involved. The League does that.